So a warm welcome to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for the second in our series on open energy data and the supply chain, presented by Foot Anstey and BEMA. Those of you who don't know, BEMA is the trade association for the UK energy supply chain. I'll pass to Chris for a moment to tell you more about Foot Anstey. We have a terrific lineup today to talk about data platforms, and we've scheduled a fair amount of time for a Q&A and discussion afterwards. So please have your questions ready, and I believe that there will be a function for you to engage a little bit more naturally with the speakers than last week, where we kind of spoke at you a little. So we have Maddie Morris from Imperial College, Grantham Institute, and Mark Bartlett from Electrolink. But first, can I pass to Chris Pritchett, just to introduce Foot Anstey and maybe give a short précis of our last session.
Thanks, Jeremy. Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris. I'm head of the energy team here at Foot Anstey. We've been involved in sort of discussions around energy data for some time. For those who weren't on the last session, this was born out of looking at energy data in the context of storage and working out that really there was extreme efficiency and benefit to be derived from having a degree of open data and making the system sort of work around access and use of that data to drive efficiencies for everybody. That led to sort of working with Laura Sanders on the Energy Data Task Force, which was extremely interesting, exciting way to kind of pull in that experience from other industries to work out, you know, how the energy system, which kind of likes to think of itself as quite advanced, but quite often isn't, can draw some learnings from other industries and really drive this agenda forward. And at in the session last a couple of weeks ago, we had a great session from Laura to sort of round up the activities of the Data Task Force and what the findings were on this sort of presumption of open data, talking a little bit about how the supply chain specifically has a role to play in that from an IoT point of view, and what the opportunities are and how energy usage in the house can be regulated, how there's a need for a different approach to regulation when there's so much interoperability between bits of kit and services coming into people's houses. Laura likes to use the term off-bundle as a potential regulator for you know, looking after that bundling of services that a home or a small business is going to use. So that was excellent. We then had a great discussion from Genelec and from forgive me, Richard Hambridge, CGI, with a little bit more sort of detail on how this works and how this can be structured. Necessarily in an hour and a half, you can't dive deep into something that would otherwise take you know, a week at least. But what it did was lay the foundation for what are we trying to achieve through the energy transition and moving away from this centralization of data to something that's far more sort of at the edge of processing, at the edge of data storage and management. So and clearly in a you know, rapidly decentralizing system, that is the way to go, and that is the approach. You know, moving from you know, where it's governing 14 separate power stations to potentially millions of instances of generation, storage, DSR, and response. You know, so I don't want to draw political analogies, but you know, local system for management of resource might be better than a centralized, inefficient system based around an Excel spreadsheet. Don't know, just a theory. So on that basis, we've outlined the framework, we've outlined sort of what we think the way forward is, and Laura's given us a great structure to do that. I think what we then need to sort of move towards is more and more questions of the how, and how are the players already involved in data platforms actually doing this, and what role can we all play as attendees and BEMA members and be part of that transition. So Jeremy, hopefully that's a bit of a wrap up of last session and laying the foundation for this one. Just a tiny bit about Foot Anstey. We're a law firm, general service law firm, but we've very much been involved in energy data, the decentralized, digitalized transition of energy, and we look forward to remaining a part of that. And we're delighted to be working with Jeremy on this webinar series. So with that, Jeremy, I'll hand back to you to bring on our first speaker. I will drop off camera and mute, but look forward to chatting to you later.
Thanks so much, Chris. And I should say on behalf of BEMA, it's an absolute pleasure to have this collaboration. I think it's really important that we do these sorts of things. And there is so much yet to be done. And part of the intention of this series is to find out, well, just to identify more clearly what there is to be done, and then what in particular the supply chain in general and BEMA in particular can do. So to that end, and in the shadow of the excellent paper that she and Maddie Morris was the lead author on a recent paper on data platforms published through EnergyRev. Can I pass to you now, Maddie, from Imperial College, to talk about data platforms? Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I just need to do the obligatory check that everyone can see my screen and hear me. Yes, great. Okay, so thank you so much for the invitation to speak today. I am Dr. Madeline Morris. I'm a research associate based at the Grantham Institute for Climate Change and the Environment at Imperial College London, and I'm a member of the Energy Revolution Research Consortium, or EnergyRev for short. In that consortium, I'm part of a team that's led by Dr. Jeff Hardy, and we look at the UK policy and regulation through the lens of smart local energy systems. And I'm here today to talk about some findings of a recent piece of work that Jeremy mentioned there on digital energy platforms. I will come to exactly what I mean by digital energy platforms, but I first just wanted to talk a little bit about EnergyRev and where what the consortium is, what we do, and where we sit in the wider scheme of things. So EnergyRev is part of the UK government's Prospering from the Energy Revolution programme, or PFER, which we'll probably refer to it from now on. And that itself falls under the umbrella of the Industrial Strategy Challenge Funds. The government invested about 100 million of public money in this programme, matched by private funds. And the majority of that funding went to 14 projects that have been tasked with proving how future energy systems could work. And these energy systems will be smart, local, and zero carbon. Some smaller, more sort of tech-specific projects have also been given some money, and the Modernising Energy Data Group has been set up. Alongside all these projects, there's a backbone of research and innovation support, and that is provided both by EnergyRev and also by a team at the Energy Systems Catapult. So we kind of sit down here in the research expertise, capability and coordination. And EnergyRev is a consortium that brings together about 60 researchers from 22 different academic institutions and from a huge range of disciplines and expertise areas. And our role in the PFER programme is to understand how smart local energy systems can play a role in a prosperous net zero future. And so we have a very unique opportunity here to gather evidence and gain some robust academic insight and do some very rigorous research and analysis, but making sure that that is very much grounded in real life projects that are starting now. So within our team, the policy and regulation team, we have been conducting a series of systematic reviews, and that is to identify whether today's policy and regulatory landscape will allow these PFER projects to realise their full potential in terms of the societal, economic and technical benefits that they have the potential to bring. We've already published one on storage and EVs, that was last year, and we've got one in the pipeline on heating and cooling, which we expect to publish early next year. But today I want to talk about some findings of our paper that we just published a couple of months ago in the summer on digital energy platforms. So before I go any further, I will define what I mean by digital energy platforms. So it's an emerging area, it's therefore not well defined, and so for the purposes of this review, so that people understood what we're talking about, we have borrowed a previous definition from another academic paper. And that describes digital platforms as digital spaces where users can communicate and interact with each other in order to get access to products, services, or more broadly, resources that are provided by peers or organisations. The reason that we decided to focus on this topic for one of our reviews is largely because there are 4 large-scale PFER demonstrator projects, each of which is very different from the other, but all of which are trying to, are doing trials of digitally enabled local energy markets that involve at least thousands of connected energy assets. And so at the heart of all of these projects, there is some kind of digital energy platform. Just to give a couple of examples, we have Reflex Orkney, that is building a virtual energy system or an integrated energy system to create a smart island. And they have a platform that's powered by Solo Energy. And then we also have Project Leo in Oxfordshire, and that is looking at the transition to distribution system operators. They have a platform that's developed by Pickle Energy. We have case studies of both of these projects in the reports that look at what the role of the platform is, who the main actors are, and what the services are that they're providing. So in our systematic review, we looked at literature of current policies and regulations. It is an unregulated space itself, but obviously isn't separate from the rest of policy and regulation. And so we found that there are three key areas when we look through the lens of smart local energy systems in particular, where there are potential issues, and that is around data, markets, and roles and responsibilities. So today I just want to talk briefly about the existing challenges in each of these areas and what the implications are for both the PIFA programme and the wider energy sector. I'm not going to do any sort of deep dives on the technicalities or sort of fine details here. I know that there will be a lot of discussion on these kinds of points later in this particular webinar series, for example, on things like standards and interoperability. So I want to go over the sort of overarching challenges. So of course, data, unsurprisingly, was kind of the top issue. Data underpins many of the operations of digital energy platforms, and the overarching issue here seems to be that the value of energy data is not well understood in this sector. As Laura Sands put it at the last session of this series, data itself is not the prize, it's not the end goal. Digitalization is the goal, but data is a crucial enabler for a future digitalized energy system. And this sector is lagging when it comes to moving forward with digitalization and understanding what data can do here. Of course, that's why the Energy Data Task Force was set up, and it found that lots of the data that would enable the innovation with things like new or improved products and services is simply missing. And that includes both consumer data, but also infrastructure and asset data. Where the data does exist, there's no common standards on what data is collected, how it's collected, or where it's stored. Laura mentioned that there were something like 41 different places that you could register a new energy asset, none of which is interoperable. And this concept of interoperability is increasingly being realized as key for smart energy systems. It's something that came up in our first review on EVs and electricity storage. The Energy Systems Catapult have identified 6 different types of interoperability, of which data is one. But I think that data interoperability can actually enable or at least support other kinds of interoperability. Things like device or consumer interoperability and vector interoperability, which again is becoming increasingly important. And Rich Hampshire also in the last session talked about, interestingly, that whilst tech is quite good at designing for backwards compatibility, the challenge now is figuring out how we can design for forwards compatibility and make sure that we don't lock out any sorts of technologies or services. Government and Ofgem are already moving very quickly on the recommendations made by the Energy Data Task Force, and it was great to hear Laura sort of reel off all the things that are happening, and she expressed delight at how quickly it's moving. The implications of that on digital energy platforms are that because they're so reliant on data and because they actually generate their own data, they will very much be affected by any new policies and regulations that come out of this. Because they're operating with the support of the Catapult and Energy Rev, the PIFA projects have a great opportunity here to provide evidence that's needed to inform those decisions and make sure the decisions are made that can ensure that they will thrive in the future. Another area that is potentially holding back digital platforms from doing their very best is our current market structure. Many of the platforms that we came across in our review could unlock the huge flexibility resource that could be provided by the millions of distributed assets that are being put onto the system. But again, the value of flexibility is not fully embraced by the sector yet. Although there are plenty of studies that have put monetary values on what a flexible system will bring versus an inflexible system, and that's in the region of something like £8 billion per year out to 2030. The current markets for flexibility are at the national level, and they've been established predominantly for larger players that are connected at the transmission level. And so it's still much harder for non-traditional flexibility providers to participate in these markets and to earn sufficient revenue. Reform of existing markets is happening. It's slow, and actually it's probably unlikely to be enough to fully realise the potential benefits that digital platforms could bring. New markets are already emerging and being trialled. The PIFA projects are excellent examples of this. And increasingly, these markets are going to need to become cross-vector and also cross-sector. And this will require data that goes beyond the boundaries of the traditional energy system. So maybe breaking down the boundaries within the energy system, but also using data that's not considered energy data. And the value and the practicalities of how this kind of integration could work and how it could bring benefits is not well understood. Armed with the right data, digital energy platforms could provide multiple benefits to the system and to consumers, but unless they're able to access and accumulate value from different markets, their business cases may not be viable. And so again, the PIFA projects are in a great position to demonstrate the value of flexibility and to show exactly what that looks like, and use this evidence to push for change to the market design that is more inclusive for non-traditional flexibility providers. And then the final theme was roles and responsibilities. Digitalisation is of course going to change the roles and responsibilities of existing actors in the energy system, and also will sometimes necessitate completely new entities to be created. And this spans right from government, who need to provide leadership and decision making, through to the regulator, who are going to need to create space for innovation and experimentation with these new models, and through to the system and the distribution system operators, whose roles are going to dramatically change and they'll need to adapt to the changing energy landscape. And it also goes right the way through to consumers, who may well play multiple roles as owners of very important and valuable data and assets. At the moment, it's unclear where the responsibilities will settle. And there's uncertainty about how and even if digital platforms should be defined and regulated. They are unregulated at the moment. It's a very fast-moving sector with new business models and services emerging, some of which could potentially be quite disruptive or transformative. And because we don't really know what these models are going to look like, there seems to be a very strong case to move away from the prescriptive regulatory regime that we have at the moment towards one that's much more flexible and agile. And of course, Ofgem have already expressed interest in moving to this kind of system, but it's unclear how we actually do that. The implications of this: well, digitalisation has proven to be a bit of a balancing act for policymakers. There's a bit of a Goldilocks dilemma in that acting too soon could stifle innovation of things like innovative platforms that are coming out with new business models, but acting too late could lock in consumer harm. Because they rely so heavily on data, any decision is going to impact on the emergence of digital energy platforms, for better or for worse, and affect what kind of role they might be able to play in the future. They could unlock the potential of distributed energy resources and the potential for consumers to get involved, but consumers will need to be able to trust the platforms with their assets and data, and also be able to see some of the benefits that it brings. And there's going to be a potentially huge shift in the responsibilities of electricity and distribution system operators. There's so much uncertainty here, and so again, the experimental nature of the PIFA projects could generate the evidence that's needed to inform the just right model of governance in this area. And they could potentially demonstrate what value the demand side could bring, and the value of flexibility and the role of digital platforms in that. And that could allow them to push for more rapid and inclusive changes to market design. So I just want to finish on where I think the opportunities are for not just the PIFA programme, but the wider energy sector. Because of the fact that energy is behind, it's lagging a little bit in terms of digitalisation, there's so many opportunities for us to learn from other sectors, other areas of the economy that have already been transformed by digital platforms. And there's valuable lessons not only in what works and what we should do, but very good lessons in what not to do and what doesn't work. One of those lessons will need to be in building trust, which is not in abundance in the energy sector, particularly when it comes to the relationship between consumers and energy companies. But digital platforms will also need to show the government and the regulator that they can be trusted to provide value and benefits to the energy system and do no consumer harm. Because this is a new and unknown area, the PIFA projects and any other platforms that are or energy data companies that are operating at the moment, everything that they're doing is generating valuable evidence that doesn't otherwise exist. And so it is so crucial that they share this with government and also with Ofgem, but also across the industry, so that we can help shape policy and regulation quickly enough that we can see the changes that we need to see, and that these platforms are likely to thrive in the future.
Thanks so much, Maddie. There's such a lot of things to bounce off there, and lots to pick up. And I think we should save that for the discussion, I suppose. So moving, just before we move from the general to the particular, I think I just want to remind people of the 4 Ds in talking about data generally. And some of them, I think, run counter to the generally centralizing impulse that we've seen in government over the last generation or two, but they are digitalization, decentralization, decarbonisation, and democratization. So moving from the general to the particular, I'd like to welcome Mark Bartlett now, who's the head of DSO transition for Electrolink, here to talk to us about Electrolink's work with data, in particular their platform, Flexor. All yours, Mark.
Hi, thanks, Jeremy. Hi, everyone. I am just going to share my screen quickly. Hopefully you can see that. So yes, I'm head of DSO transformation at Electrolink. I'm also head of service for Flexor, which is our tedious, clunky Excel spreadsheet, which we're hoping will be at the center of data sharing for the electricity distribution energy. Obviously, that's a kind of a bad joke. It's an implementation of everything that Madeline was talking about, but for electricity distribution and its customers. And I'll go into it in more detail, obviously, but we're hoping to enable some of those use cases, which Madeline was, which the industry really needs on an enterprise-grade data sharing platform. So yes, Jeremy was saying this is an implementation of some of the things we've been talking about in the what's it called, the MEDA projects and the Energy Data Task Force. So I've got a couple of slides on Electrolink. You might not have heard of us. We'll talk about what Flexor is, what it's been doing so far, how far we got into the project. We'll talk about which data we see as most useful for the industry and some use cases for Flexor. So I won't dwell on this too long, but I think the context is probably relevant. We were set up in 1998 to fulfill a license condition to provide data to the retail industry and beyond. So this is meter data over a system which we built called, which we procured and we operate, called the DTS, a data transfer service. This is, I mean, it was set up really to be a dumb data sharing provision platform for energy retail. The license condition was on the distribution network companies, the DNOs. They set us up to fulfill that license condition, and it works. It does its job. But this slide is kind of busy. It's designed to show you that we've been doing a lot more than just operating the DTS. We've been really providing a lot of services on top of the DTS, governance and data services to enable innovation in the energy retail space. And I'll go into those in a little bit more detail on the next slide. But over the last couple of years, we've been also providing more services for our DNO owners, so on the electricity network side of the industry. So, the reason we're building Flexor, and why we think we're well placed to help in this area of data platform provision, data services. We understand the technologies. We have experience. We operate Dacusa and some other governance platforms and systems for the industry. We obviously understand data, and we get how both the incumbents and innovators work. So what we want to do is provide data services to enable innovation, to enable others to be able to build on that data and really disrupt and create great things for the UK. Some examples of the work we've been doing to date. We launched a couple of innovation projects with Western Power Distribution over the last couple of years. One of them uses our data to detect where low carbon technologies like electric vehicles and photovoltaics, etc., are connected to help the distribution network companies plan the grids better, more efficiently. At the moment, they don't have good records of where things are connected on the LV network, especially behind the meter. We're building on that project at the moment to expand that to a virtual low voltage network monitoring technology. We're also just kicking off a project called Skyline, which is working with the EV industry to help the DNOs see where EVs are being connected, using our data transfer infrastructure to support that. So part of that project, we are going to be learning, what incentives are needed to support the various actors across the EV industry to share their data to enable, again, better planning, to make sure that the distribution network, the networks themselves are ready for EVs and also not over-engineered at the same time. You've got to get the balance right to enable optimal planning rather than inefficiency. Other services, just quickly, we've been sharing embedded generation data, which we have on our data network with the ESO. That enables them to forecast better, and we provide data to various energy system, to Ofgem, to BEIS, and to the government to enable them to see how things like switching and the energy transformation are happening. So we have that data as well. So on to Flexor. Flexor is our latest project. We've been building this system for over a year now. Well, yes, just over a year now. And what it is, it connects the data from the 6 GB distribution network companies who are on the left-hand side of this slide, and makes their data available to the various beneficiaries on the right. And there might be some more not on the list. It includes a DER register. So this is your embedded generation, energy storage, utility scale batteries and so on. In the future, we have ambitions for this to also include much smaller DER, such as electric vehicles and maybe some behind the meter DER as well, which is not catered for, as Madeline mentioned before, in the flexibility markets at the moment. It will also include DNO data from all 6 GB DNOs. So this will be a mixture of the data you can access already over the various websites that the DNOs operate. For example, long-term development statement, planning data, asset data, that sort of static data. Apart from we will make it consistent across the DNOs, we will standardize, we will identify where there's inconsistencies in data quality, and we will work with the industry to fix the data so that it's much more useful for the end customer and available in one place. And moving forward through the project will enable real-time data transfer. At the moment it's done through Excel spreadsheets. What we are looking to do is connect into DNO backend systems to enable data to be updated automatically much more quickly, and to enable real-time or near real-time data transfer where it's appropriate, where it can enable things like local energy markets and flexibility markets as they become much more day ahead or almost real-time. So yeah, the three main use cases are whole of system, flexibility services, flexibility markets, and improved DNO services, but we'll touch on that in the next couple of slides. Where we've got to, we started the build phase for Flexor in June this year. Started with the discovery phase. We set up the FDSG, the Flexor Development Steering Group, which enables key decision makers from all 6 GB DNOs. So they are on board with this project. It's, for sharing their data, it's absolutely crucial that we do have their full support. We've set up a beta user group. So this enables people from all of the stakeholders we mentioned, or as many as possible, to attend show and tells and to attend feedback sessions, which we hold on a fortnightly basis. So as Flexor is built, we share all the learning from them, and we get their feedback so we can make sure that we are building the data platform that the industry actually needs rather than what we think they need. That lasted a month, and so into July, obviously the FDSG and the beta youth group are ongoing. They'll run throughout the course of the project, but the build itself started. So we're starting to build the DER register, which at the moment includes the data from the DNOs, which they're sharing on the embedded capacity registers. If you notice, this includes DER for 1 megawatt and above. But what we want to do is, moving forward, we haven't done this yet. This is in our forward plans to include smaller DER to enable flexibility for more and more participants. So we want to go way below 1 megawatt and be much more inclusive in the data that we share. There's some barriers with that, with governance and so on, but we're working to address those problems. And we want to include half-hourly data as well. So where appropriate, users will be able to see how the DER is operating. We have all this data. It's easy for us to implement this, but again, there are various constraints as to what we can share and with whom. So that will be tied in with a data triage system as per the Energy Data Task Force recommendations. Moving forward, we are just starting to include the DNO data. We're including a geographic front end, which will combine the DER and the DNO where the DER and DNO assets are, and you'll be able to see how they can interoperate with each other, where there's spare capacity on the network, and where new DER might be connected, or where there's opportunity for flexibility at national or local level. We want to have all that data easy to access and in one place, geographic, or tablet views or single line diagrams, or eventually API to API, machine to machine connections, so you'll be able to use that data to enable various kinds of innovation. After February, we've got a network innovation competition bid in, and we will know the result of that in a month. But the plan is that's when we start to enable the machine-to-machine connections, and we really build Flexor to make it fully operational, as opposed to at the moment where it's MVP, which is minimum viable product. So it's just a demonstration at the moment, but we're building the core systems. I'll probably not spend too long on this slide. This is what we've done so far. We've created a portal. We've created multi-factor authentication. You can log on to Flexor now if you're in the beta user group. We've consolidated the DER. We've still at 1 megawatt, but if governance permits in the future, we have implemented the technology to enable below 1 megawatts. It's massively scalable. We can have as much DER as required. We can have LV, low voltage connected assets like EVs if we can in the future. And we have the user interface, which I can show on the next slide as well. So we've created the login page. The map on the top right shows the DER register, the map view. As you zoom into the map, you see more and more detail of what's connected where, and you can filter by different kinds of distributed energy resources, DER. If you click on one, you get the bottom right-hand view. So that's showing you the consumption, the import and export of this particular DER through time. You can change, for a week or for a day or for a year. I think we've got 2 years of data in there, but access is very restricted based on permissions for that. So that's a governance issue. And the bottom left is a tabular view as well. What we haven't implemented yet is the API access or downloads, but that's because we're still in the closed beta stage. So it's really beta user group access only, at least through until February next year. So we were asked to talk to you about which data we see as most useful. We had a consultation actually over the summer. We had some fairly clear direction on whether now was the right time to provide a data provision and standardization service for electricity distribution and its customers. I think it's fairly clear that was a yes, and also the timing is probably right now. We're building this to be ready for the next distribution price control review. And also we expect the EV industry to really take off and flourish over the next few years, and the energy transition in general to pick up pace. The National Grid were talking a couple of days ago about the need for much more renewable generation, and also to accommodate that we need flexibility to really work as well as it can. Of the kinds of data that we're sharing, we've got planning data. So this is stuff about what network is going to be planned and built in the near future. The loading on the network, circuit capacity, substation capacity, switchgear ratings, and so on. We have the real-time data. So this will be what happens on a half-hour basis, or even sooner, depending on what systems we can connect to. So you'll be able to see what capacity there is in real time. You'll be able to operate your generators so they don't, or your demand or whatever, so that it doesn't overload the network. So this is going to be more relevant to the energy supply companies, so that they can start to have sight of what you can do and can't do within the constraints of the network at all voltages, as they move more into providing services for prosumers. Operational data and real-time data are probably fairly similar, but that's how we organised it. Oh, sorry, yeah, the conclusion for this one is really there isn't really a conclusion. At the moment, all of the data that we could share seems to be equally useful, but we will obviously keep doing consultations. We'll keep doing engagement with our beta user group and Flexor Development Steering Group, and we will prioritise if there data as priorities that emerge. The last bit of my presentation, what are the use cases? We touched on them before. Accelerating the GB flexibility market is the obvious one. As Madeline already said, the flexibility markets at the moment are really focused on national services for transmission-connected generators, DER. Aggregators are also focusing on big commercial industrial loads as well, like supermarket refrigeration. These tend to be the higher voltage connected customers, and they sometimes have bespoke hardware to enable flexibility to work. What we're trying to do is enable flexibility to work at much lower voltages for smaller customers, to really increase the number of participants who could be included in this, and also to make them visible to the network. So maybe they could be targeted. Did you know you can provide these services to save yourself some money? Some questions. So yeah, we're building that system to enable that, and working closely with the industry. Whole of systems. This is we will make Flexor compatible with other data systems. We're not proposing to be the one data provision service for the whole industry, the whole of energy. We are just doing distribution. We're making that data available from the 6 GB DNOs and their DER customers in a consistent way, and then we will interface, or we will enable others to interface. We will interface with the other data platforms like gas, transport, transmission, etc., so that others will be able to seamlessly get data from all of the data platforms across the industry. And we're working with the likes of Icebreaker One and people looking at governance and standards for that, so that we can ensure that Flexor is completely standardized with the rest of the energy industry. Approved DNO services, it will be one place to look at all DNO data. It will be consistent. We will fix data inconsistencies, work with the industry to do this. The other one, electric vehicles, smart cities. This is by going and enabling data revision for smaller DER customers, so that they can be included in the energy transformation. And finally, innovators, by making all this data available. We're not doing the innovation ourselves in a way. We're enabling others to do this. So things like market operators, disruptive innovators who want to create new services to enable efficiencies and the data transformation to accelerate. They will have much easier access to the data with fewer barriers, which will hopefully make their lives easier, which is what our ambition is. So, yeah, the last slide. How can you get involved? Please contact us. Contact me directly if you would like. The beta user group is open to everyone. This will enable you to see and test Flexor, and you'll be able to have feedback in how it's developed. I think I've hopefully stuck to my 15 minutes there, but that is the last slide from me. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's fantastic. And let's get Madeline back as well. And Mark, if you could stop screen sharing, that's perfect. So you should be able to see me, Mark, and Madeline. So we're going to go through, hi John, we're going to go through some of the things that the audience has been raising, which you might have seen in the chat box. So I think the first one, is for Mark. I'm going to go for this one. Whilst you were speaking, I was thinking about resistance, with no pun intended. Do you find there's resistance on getting support from the various stakeholders on the Flexor project? Not so much the beneficiary side, of course, but how's it on the DNO side, getting them to conform?
The DNOs have, on the whole, been very cooperative. We do have full buy-in from all 6. So that has, I'm not going to lie, it's been hard work. But yes, they are fully cooperative. They are intending. They also attend the beta user groups and the Flexor Development Steering Group sessions. So they are actively engaged. They do see the value. It's also helping them to meet license conditions, which often are imposing them to share data. So they have that motivation. Really our main obstacle has been the governance. If we want to share data below 1 megawatt, the DER side, we can't do this because it's not in DCP 350, and the Utilities Act is stopping the DNOs from sharing data, or at least we think it is at the moment. So we're working with the industry to try and resolve some of these barriers to sharing the level of data that we'd like to be able to share with the industry. Obviously, there are commercial considerations with DER as well. If we share the wrong half-value data, we could give away, tactics for various companies who are, operating their generation in certain ways. It's a competitive market, so we have to be very careful that we don't foreclose any competition or disrupt markets. We don't want to do this. So it's a fine line we have to tread.
Wow, and we actually did have a question from the audience. Thank you, Paul Barnfather. He says, open energy data feels like the way forward, but I'm starting to worry about the dependence on regulation and policy to enable this change. It feels too slow. How can we move faster? Who would like to take that one?
I can probably provide some comments on that. I think it's definitely an interesting one, because I think in the Energy Data Task Force recommendations or in the report, although they said that government and the regulator definitely have a role that they need to step in and provide leadership, I think there were also areas where they said industry kind of needs to do this and they are best placed to do it. But as Laura Sands pointed out in the previous session of this, because energy is quite a heavily regulated sector, when the regulator does say you must do something, we move quite quickly. So it's interesting. I think that they would maybe prefer that for some of it, the industry needs to go first and kind of lead the way here. But as Mark said, it's a very competitive market, and so nobody really wants to be the first person to do something very different. And regulators and policymakers, we often hear as academics that they don't have the evidence that's needed to make these decisions yet. And so I think that's where, again, this Prospering from the Energy Revolution programme has quite a good opportunity, because we're we have good relationships with and conduits to policymakers. We've got the demonstrator projects themselves who are already operating in the current landscape. They have no derogations. They're not in a sandbox or anything like that. They're operating now. So I'm hopeful that what does come out of these projects is some robust evidence from the industry partners that shows what they can do at the moment, and that we can identify any blocking areas, and we can hopefully take them to the policymakers.
Oh, that's so helpful. I think Jeremy, I'm going to pull Jeremy on, because he made a really nice point there. He said interesting talking to Paul in the chat box about the pace of regulation, and as you have said, there's this risk of going in too early as well as leaving it too late. And Jeremy had a question about, on a device level, was there a lot of criticism for government for picking winners too early, and how do we make sure that we manage these risks, including things like data services?
So I was just stealing Maddie's ideas on that one, just in violence.
Not stealing.
with her on that. My background's smart metering, and there was a lot of criticism at a device level of government early on about over specifying the product, or making clear decisions about using, for example, an in-home display rather than an app, and all sorts of things. I think the challenges are probably different with regard to data regulation. I think they're a bit different to device regulation, but there's definitely lessons to be learned there. It's not the sort of it's not the sort of question that you can give a 3-sentence answer to and kind of feeling like we've got it understood. But yeah, there are real challenges, I think, on this, particularly if you don't know exactly what data you want yet. Anyway, Maddie or Mark, you.
Sure.
Can comment.
My input to these questions is we're learning by doing. There's a certain amount, if when we find barriers and we have to, flag them up to BEIS and Ofgem, and they're certainly very interested, and they want to help. But these things do take time. So what we do is we sort of annex that part of the Flexor platform, and only, if only the people who have access to the data can see it for now, and then we will see if we can open a bit more to make it more open. That doesn't really make sense, but you know what I mean. So more people can see it. Yeah, I think that's probably we find things all the time that are potential issues, but we're working with the industry. We have a governance team as well who are looking at this, so they're very on it as well.
Oh, I'm not surprised to hear that. I have a question that I find quite close to my heart, actually. Thank you, Richard, for raising this. You may not have all seen it because it went to all panelists rather than all panelists and attendees. So Richard says, how soon do you believe a community solar farm will be able to supply its local community directly?
I don't really know how quickly that. I guess this is an issue of sort of licensing requirements, and
yes.
I don't know. I don't think I can add anything to that. I'm sorry.
No, you don't. Never apologise. That's the whole point of these workshops, is to tackle the things that we actually don't have answers to. I mean, there was a similar one around EV charging point and heat pumps being identified as a very strong candidate for decarbonisation. Well, so is having locally generated supply. So let's just break this one down together. Maybe Jeremy's got a view as well as Mark.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a local energy market, doesn't it? If you'd have to be on the grid because the sun doesn't shine at night. So you'd have to manage, either storage or virtually, you say that this town has this much energy demand and the solar has this much energy generation, and on average, they equal each other out. But you would be able to use a data platform like the one that we're developing to be able to manage that and do that. I don't know if that helps, if that's what your thoughts, if that is answering the question properly, Richard. But that's the question of when, and the data to do that's probably available on a bespoke basis, but the platform that we're building will be ready within the next year or so.
I think that is generally the vision. I can remember attending a really great conference by Regen, 4 years ago, and the sort of panacea, what they really wanted to see was local community hubs, and everything feeding in on a more micro generation basis. And that's something that Chris works hard on, is making sure that the necessary power purchase agreements and sleeving arrangements are ensuring that that community energy is going towards the grid overall. But it's got to be a bigger question about the overall data piece, and something that can be, like you say, pulling this platform apart and making sure that the right place is getting the benefit.
Can I come in on that? Because I think this is slightly related to the issue of asset registration. And you both speakers talked about the need for registration of data assets. Now, we also talk, and including behind the meter assets, we also talk a lot about registration of generation and storage assets as physical things, for things like health and safety, for example. So there's work through the Trustmark data warehouse, for example, that will give property owners or property dwellers a great deal of information at building level of Britain's built environment. Now, I am wary of, in our decentralizing impulse, to actually centralize a great deal of information into one data warehouse. I don't know. I think this is something that we as an industry have to think about, is whether we need lots of little databases, one for generation assets, another for data assets or storage assets, or whether it is more useful to at least have these systems of asset registration talking to each other. And then we start talking about BIM, building in information modeling and so on. So then we start talking about product data rather than energy data. And that's another rabbit hole. For John, you're smiling wryly. I can bring you in.
Well, the good news is we've got a whole series of these, so we can tackle some more of these subjects. Tony Shorthouse has actually put 3 questions in the Q&A, quite linked to what you just said. So one of them was, should we be keeping open data and an individual's data handling separately, so then allowing at least part of the data set to be handled in a more readily available way? I think that's about this sort of segregation element. Mark, would you like to take that one?
Absolutely, Tony. This is what we're trying to do. At the moment, we haven't got the data triage up and running, and it's the full implementation, which is why we're being cautious. But in the future, anything open, you'll be able to see anything, whether it's some controversy or there's doubts about the level of permissions, and we'll keep that back until we've resolved the issue.
Brilliant, thank you. And actually, whilst you're there, he says, Tony Shorthouse says, is there a need for DC USA to become more available and adaptable to the needs of the digital marketplace, like legal and technical sandboxes seem to be required?
Tony, that would be fantastic if that were to happen. I'd fully support that. I mean, in the long term, the DCUSA governance is going to go over to the network code, I would have thought. And that's going to be a more agile form of governance. The industry is cognizant that governance can be a barrier, or at least is quite slow to change, and we don't want it to slow the pace of the transition down. So yeah, there are actions underway to speed up and change the way the governance is managed.
Fantastic, that's such a positive response. Thank you, Mark. And he's got one more. Go on. Okay. Any thoughts on if Brexit could or should result in changes to regulation or GDPR going forward?
So, I mean, I think Jeremy touched on, you were talking about the health and safety example. I mean, there's a sort of legitimate purpose part of GDPR that would enable a lot of what we need to do in the electricity industry. And I think at the moment, the industry is being quite risk averse when it comes to GDPR, and for good reasons. There's some massive fines, you can get into real trouble. I think, there's an opportunity if we in-house GDPR or an equivalent rule to make it clearer about the boundaries of where, of how you can operate within, data privacy laws. and really, not use them as a reason not to do things anymore, to really create a bit more certainty about what's possible.
I find that really positive. Thank you.
I'll try to be positive.
Madeline, back to you. I really found your presentation fascinating, and I suspect we were all quite spellbound by what you were presenting because there was so much to take on board, but there was one right towards the end. If you could expand on your opportunities slide, I wanted to know what the other areas of the economy you were talking about that have already been transformed by these digital platforms, and what we can learn from them. Could you name any of them for us, just for clarity?
So the ones that sort of come to my mind are in sort of transport, and if I say ride hailing, you'll probably immediately jump to a few big companies, some of which have been banned in certain cities or certain countries. So I think I think Uber is allowed now in London, but it had quite a long ban, and it's been having a bit of a fight with regulators and with the mayor about that, because they made some serious mistakes where they did not protect consumers well enough, and there were huge failings there. And so that's kind of something you can see potentially some parallels with energy, in that Uber deals with distributed assets that are owned, and trying to make better use of the assets that already exist, and connect up people who need them with people who can provide services. And you could probably see that happening maybe in energy, but obviously because energy is an essential service, we can't have those kinds of mistakes in the energy sector.
Completely agreed.
Yeah.
And now that we're all back together with the last 3 minutes, I'm just going to open the floor for discussion. So welcome back, Chris. And thank you, Jeremy, for yours. I think we've answered all of the audience questions. Oh, and there's actually one really quick one. Question for Mark. What's the time resolution for the DER data in Flexor? Is it half hourly?
We do have half-hourly data, but you can't access it. Really annoying answer, and that drives me crazy. Subject to us being able to get the right permissions, it will be half-hourly. At the moment, what you'll be able to see is similar to what's already available on the ECRs, the embedded capacity registers, which is a monthly update, and it shows you the capacity of the generator rather than its output.
That is really concise, and I would strongly recommend everybody connects with Madeline and Mark via LinkedIn, and then you can keep your dialogue going. And of course, Jeremy, Chris, and I, and John as well. You're on mute, Jeremy. You've been doing this a long time.
No, I wasn't going to say anything. John, you've got 2 minutes to say your piece. But before you do, can I just say thank you, everyone, for this. And next fortnight, so on the 5th of November, we are going to be talking about the data itself, the data needs, its applications, how it's most useful, and basically how we can make sure we are getting the right data in format, in content, and in quality. So please join us for that. But sorry, John, I'll pass.
Okay, well, just very quickly, 1 minute. I thank the speakers. That was another really interesting session. I really enjoyed that. I thank Foot Anstey for organising and making it work. I thank Jeremy for bringing it all together. A couple of thoughts I took away from that. One was the data. It seems to me it's inherently forcing localism. It's the sort of data and how it's used, I think, will increasingly create local markets. It's not something to me that's useful on a national level. It's useful because it's local. The other point, data platforms are really important to me because I think they're inherently the drivers of innovation in all of this, because all the issues around standardization, interoperability, regulation, etc., are going to be things that confront the platforms, and they've got to solve those problems. And I think anything we can do to help them. I was really pleased to hear Mark talking about just doing, learning by doing was great. The other thing I think coming out of, thanks to Jeremy for mentioning BIM, the issue there is interconnecting dictionaries. So the ability for one data store to access data in another one makes it really, really powerful, but also creates a real need for making them all understand how they describe things. Lots of interesting work to be done there. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for joining that, and I'll look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks' time.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, all.
Bye.